Hello and welcome to the Gift Spotter movement. My name is Kristen Hayward, aka the Gift Spotter, and my purpose is to help you find your true nature so that you can find your unique purpose, because the world needs you. No matter how old you are, the world needs you now. In this video, I want to explore what I think is humanity's biggest crisis, and that is that there's few people who have a strong sense of self. What is a sense of self? A sense of self is your true nature. It's knowing who you are at a deeper level, outside of who you're expected to be, who you've been told you are, and what society values from you as a human being. And to find out, to have a strong sense of self, it does start with self-esteem. What is self-esteem? Well, sense of self-esteem is basically whether you like yourself as a human being. So it's about how much you like yourself as a human being. So why don't you take a moment now, pause the video, and give yourself a score from 0, hate yourself, to 10, in love with yourself. And we'll use that score a little later. So how do we get our self-esteem? Well, as we are born and then grow, we get our self-esteem from the feedback from people in our lives, primarily from the people who raise us. Could be most often it's our parents, or perhaps it's some significant other people who raise you. That's where we get an indication, our first indication of what we are like as a human being. Are we basically good, or are we basically bad? Now, the tricky thing is that we believe that feedback, is that we grow believing that we are basically good or basically bad, based on a whole number of things, but primarily how the person giving you that feedback feels about themselves. Do they have a strong sense of self? Do they know their true nature? Have they done the work? The work simply means that we have looked beyond our ego self and we get a sense of who we are as a person. We find our unique nature, which isn't comparable to another human being. So we get our feedback from people who, a lot of them are not whole. Yeah. Let's say we get feedback that the way we walk, talk, move, act it's basically no good, and that's what we're told, that, or we might not be told we're no good, but we're led to believe that we are no good from the feedback from the people around us. And so we grow up believing, either from our parents, from society, what society measures as good, from our teachers, our friends, that we aren't good enough. Then we grow believing that we're not good enough. And each time we try, or we want to show up, then a little voice inside our head says, well, no, you can't show up because you're not good enough. Yeah. But of course you are. We are good enough. We're uniquely beautiful. Our true nature is unique, and we are here to serve a selfless purpose here on the earth. But these little voices in our head telling us that we're not good enough can really stop us from showing up and living our unique purpose. let's just say that you were one of the lucky ones and you were raised believing that you were good enough. But perhaps you were raised believing that you were good enough based on the fact that you're good at school, perhaps you're good at sports, perhaps you're good at art, and the people who raised you and your teachers and society deems that those characteristics means that you are good enough. Does that mean that you then have a strong sense of self? Not necessarily, because perhaps you've strengthened those qualities that other people deem that are good enough. But the light that flickers inside of you, your true nature, hasn't really had any airtime. So you also feel like something's missing because you don't have a strong sense of self. So there's self-esteem built from the external, from those people around us, and then there's self-esteem built from getting to know our true nature, who we are really, beyond what other people deem to be good or bad. And that's what I'd like you to know, that there is no good or bad, that you are uniquely beautiful, and that you do have a unique purpose on this earth. And that if you basically have this programming, and it is faulty programming, that you aren't good enough, then that is your work to do. That is your inner work to do. Because you are unequivocally beautiful and unique. Isn't that nice to know? I say that it is a crisis of self-esteem that the world is suffering from, because we have been raised to believe certain things are good and certain things are bad. We need to get beyond that, because if you are carrying this sense of being not good enough, then you'll walk around wounded. And then your beautiful true nature can't really be put to work towards your unique purpose that will serve humanity and the world or the earth. And if you are walking around thinking, yes, I'm good enough because everything that I've been led to believe that is good, such as perhaps being good looking, having wealth, having a career, those things aren't going to fulfill you either, because what you have been led to believe is good enough will just simply cause you suffering as you try to get more and more and more of those things to keep topping you up and keep you feeling good enough. But underneath it all, no matter whether you've been raised to believe you're good or bad, the truth is that your unique, your true nature will always be calling you to come back to yourself. My favorite Rumi poem, come back to the root of yourself. You are a ruby embedded in granite. Why do you pretend it isn't so? I see you. Come, return to the root of yourself. How do you do that? Well, it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. But I think the very first step is to recognize that you are not what other people think of you, whether that be good or bad. You are neither. Now, I was brought up to believe that I was basically bad, that there was something wrong with me, that I was too much, too talkative, too emotional, too sensitive. But in actual fact, all those things, whilst they have their shadow attributes, so by shadow attributes, I mean that they can work against me. They also have their light attributes. Being sensitive means that I can sit here before you and connect with you as a human being, that I can see your true nature, and that I can see that you are much, much, much more than those judgments. So being sensitive has both light and shadow attributes, and every single trait that you have has both light and shadow attributes. So it's really time that you stopped looking at yourself in terms of whether you're good or bad. You are neither, and you are both. Coming back to your true nature means recognizing these traits and letting go of those labels, and beginning to start to talk to yourself in a different way, to calm the fears within yourself that you aren't good enough, because you're here on this earth. Anybody that is here on this earth must serve a purpose, otherwise you just wouldn't be here. So let's come back to that score. Did you score yourself a 6 and below? Perhaps that means that you don't feel that you're good enough. So it's time to analyse that, and perhaps you can bring that part in closer, the part that says you're not good enough, and have a conversation with it. Talk to it. It's usually just a childlike attribute of us that needs the mature adult part of us to communicate with it and tell it that it is good enough. Yeah? And if you're somebody who thinks, yeah, I'm good enough, and you judge other people, so you judge people as better or less than you, then it's time for you to find your humility and realize that that also isn't true. And that if you do continue to believe that you are better or less than other human beings, then you will continue to suffer, because you are unique, uncomparable to another human being. Yeah. We can't really score you between how good you are, 0 to 10. It was really a trick question for your ego. And yeah, I want you to know that, because you cannot score yourself. It's impossible. You are uncomparable, and everybody on this earth has a unique purpose. And if you're raised to believe that you're not good enough, then the people that raise you also do not feel good enough and are suffering from low self-esteem, and also have a weak sense of self. So there's no blaming them. Find your compassion for them and get on with the job of finding your true nature, so that you can live a unique purpose that can help the whole, which is the world. If you have bought into the belief that living a life to serve your own selfish purposes is the way to live, then you have been mistaken. So, step 1, start to address those voices in your head that say you're better than or less than another human being, and bring them in with your one true self, and have a conversation with them so that you can change that belief and start showing up. We need everybody on the earth to start showing up.